So in reading George Musgrave's book, Can Music Make You Sick? I took this as a criticism of my own work. Techno-positivism's fantasy of participation and its impact on the efficacy of communication alongside the reinforcement of existing power structures while simultaneously espousing an entrepreneurial culture which places the responsibility for success on the individual while obfuscating the power relations of the wider music and tech industries. This is from Can Music Make You Sick by George Musgrave.
And Sally Ann Gross.
And Sally Ann Gross, sorry, my bad. I'm going to frame these things through some of my work and some of my output.
Mm-hmm.
So close that, make the thing is kind of like, yeah, just do it.
Yeah, sure.
Without critique and without pushing back,
Mm-hmm.
that's not really that helpful.
Sure.
Some of my maybe output over the last decade, I've been like, independent spirited, very DIY, but as is the label and that energy. Again, without further interrogation and critique, sometimes that can be like not that helpful for people.
Sure.
Sometimes I get asked why I'm not pushing back on big tech or the music industry and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, well, how much of that can I control?
Sure.
I can't like get Daniel Ek in a headlock or change the streaming price.
Mm-hmm.
I think about, dealing with what we can control.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that maybe isn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And then this techno-positivism,
Mm-hmm.
like being maybe my work and some of my output seen as being like optimistic. Just do it. Just go.
Yeah, sure.
Without kind of going into it further.
Mm-hmm.
And what I want to do with this conversation is give a few more layers, some
Mm-hmm.
depth.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
when I said close that, make the thing, I didn't mean try and go into the industry and
Sure.
become like the biggest star possible.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
like, just make something.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's really interesting as well that you would read that as a critique of the thing that you do. So there's a few things I would say in here. Like the first thing is techno-positivism and having a degree of optimism towards the kind of benefits that you can derive from engaging with technology is not necessarily a bad thing. It's not that that's bad per se. There's something incredibly empowering and motivating and uplifting about this idea that we are all able to close the app, make the thing, participate. Me and you also have me when I was younger and at a much lower level than you have come from a similar world of that particular element of the UK music industry, which is like a bastion of this kind of neoliberal individualized idea that like you can just do what you like. Like you get up earlier, go to bed later, hustle harder, do your thing. Not everything about that is a negative thing. Much about that is wonderful. But when we talk about this like critique of the power dynamic that's involved in it, again, there's two elements to that, I would say. One is to say that like if what you're doing is often critiquing the power dynamics of the music industry, there's a sense that for the individual, that's a kind of unfulfilling answer. Because it's like, well, how can I do anything about that? When I talk in my research about mental health and well-being, and people are like, right, well, what can I do to protect myself and to look after my mental health and well-being? And I say things like, well, really, it's like a structural problem of like the psychosocial working conditions of being a musician in 2025. They go, right. And so what does that mean for me? So there is an element in which that's frustrating. But another like layer to this in terms of like the power dynamics that something like your version of techno-optimism conceals, for example, is the power dynamic that goes when you speak to people that are from London, they can just close the app and make the team because they're in London. If you want to just crack on and just like do your thing, that's much, much harder if you're in Blackpool, right, or Cornwall,
Or Mumbai.
or Mumbai, right? Yeah, we're just talking about the UK, right? But there is a profound advantage, like a quote unquote privilege, although that word's been morphed into whatever it is today. But there is a profound geographic privilege to being from London, and that's a wider structural challenge as well.
Yeah.
So
as I did my work and in terms of like sharing my ideas in lectures and traveling around the country and around the world, that was the kind of following question: are the ideas still true at scale? Because like the thing that I feel like there's a whole industry around now is answering like what I call the question of like, how can I get paid to make whatever I like without having to fund or promote it while living good in an expensive city until I die? Which no one knows the answer to, right?
Yeah, right.
And
well, the answer is your mum has to live here.
Yes. Yeah, that is... yeah.
Right. The answer is your mum either A, wealthy enough that she is able to ideally own or as second place rent a ideally house or flat within, an hour of Charing Cross, or is your mum in social housing within an hour of Charing Cross? Because rich or poor, living within an hour of Charing Cross, if you want to work in music and do this thing, you're profoundly advantaged.
And like your personal journey, let's compress this into like 1 minute, just so we've got some skin in the game here.
Sure.
You signed to a major record label as a rapper in the early 10s while doing a degree. And then I guess these worlds are overlapped. So it's like part your experience directly and then your research as well, right?
Yeah, right. So yeah, I was making music in like 2000 and I probably started in like 2009, 2010. I'm from Norwich, which is not a big like rap area. Moved to London in like the early 2010s, got with my manager who was like, he just managed me and Emily Sandé. So it was that sort of era. So I was like, oh, whoa, like, and yeah, he met with me and was like, right, which major do you want to sign to? Which publisher do you want to sign to? I didn't know what a publisher was. I'd never even heard of a publisher. I got signed to Sony and was just doing that. But that was all like while I was at uni. But I basically stayed at uni so I could rap. That's really the whole reason I stayed. I won like a full scholarship to do a PhD, but I didn't really do a PhD. I just rapped and did a PhD at the end. And then when it finished, it was like, I guess I finished doing my PhD. Basically, my money ran out from doing my PhD and I got signed and I got my advance and I thought, right, that advance is going to last me probably 2 years. I got 2 years to make it. And at the end of those 2 years, I basically hadn't made it. I mean, I hadn't made enough to live a life that wasn't like camping and, Pizza Express once a year, just like not enough for me at the time. And wanted to continue what I was doing my PhD on, which was around what does it feel like to compete.
That seems like a completely rational decision, just to be like, oh, I didn't make it, and then just move on.
Yeah, well, it was a mixture of like, oh, I didn't make it, move on, and also it just become long for me. Like it stopped being fun.
Okay.
Right? It's like I got signed, I get delivered them the single, delivered them the video. I was like, I tried to drop out of my PhD. I was like, I just got signed to Sony. I'm gonna like run the whole world. Do you know what I mean? I'm gonna be Skepta or whatever. And they were just like, yeah, you're not really a priority act, so like it will sit in the label, like we've got the master, we're ready to roll, but you're not really a priority act. So just like come around, keep doing the studios. Been a long time since I've been in Tileyard, like trying to get cuts on people's albums and this and that. But like that's the game I was in. And by that time I was like 28. I was like, this is just long for me. Like it's not happening for me.
So did you avoid music making you sick through making that decision, do you think? By not like maybe going another two more years?
It is something that I've thought about more through this happening, because it's like, I didn't know if I had like a personal experience with this mental health and the music industry thing necessarily. I mean, I know I definitely got like frustrated with it and down about it and this and that, but I also think I was able to like leap from one hyper competitive, mad, risky career, which like music is, into another one, like which academia is. But academia, it's like it had a salary and it gave me like the freedom to do the thing that I realized that I loved, which was words. And if I could like derive a comparable amount of pleasure from like writing words in books than I could from spitting them in microphones, then to me that was all good. It was fine. It still gives me joy. Like it gives me like profound joy.
And when was the moment where you decided to go down this path of like, okay, things are not okay in like a more of a macro sense? Because when you're experiencing it, it's harder to be like, oh, maybe more people are experiencing this thing before. Maybe more people have had trouble with the music industry. When you're in it, you can't really consider anyone else's feelings or their kind of well-being and what people have gone through in history. But when was that moment with your work?
I mean, I definitely can remember, well, even during my PhD, right, I was interviewing other artists and I never talked about mental health in my PhD at all. Like the word never comes up once, like the word well-being is never mentioned once, but you got a sense from the people around you that like you're constantly butting up into this thing, this mystical thing, and that was grinding you down in a variety of different ways. And it's not just like the struggle of people that didn't quote unquote make it, which I guess is probably my struggle. That would be the story of mine. Not that it was a profound, like heartbreaking struggle, but that would have been mine. But the struggles of people then who are like famous, who are running into things as well, it's at all different tiers. But I think for me, like I remember after I finished my PhD, I got introduced to Sally Gross and she said to me, I'm thinking of doing this research project and no one, I'm having trouble having people believe in it and I'm not really sure. My son, I might have even been in Tileyard, like in a session with her son, like when he introduced me to her. He was like, yeah, he told me that you've been doing a PhD on what it feels like to compete. I've got this title, and the title is, Can Music Make You Sick? And I was like, oh, wow, like,
It's a banger.
yeah, it's a banger. I was like, this is a banger of an album title. I mean, being introduced to Sally was like a really powerful moment, because when she delivered that title and that idea, I was like, this is crystallizing so much of like the lives of the people that I see around me, and a bit my own, but I wouldn't say too much my own. I wouldn't feel that I had like sort of had anxiety during my journey, but it allowed me to like relate to people. Like when I sit and interview musicians and I talk to them, like if I interview a rapper in London or Copenhagen or Mumbai and we talk about getting cuts on albums or this, that, like we're speaking a language that each of us understands, and they know that like I've done this game, you know. I've never got to a really, really high level, but I've done the game enough to know it.
Yeah.
You know?
And like with Sally, she is like someone that has thought about this for years before you did as well, right? So
Sure.
she's like decades, maybe even before
Yeah,
that.
well, she'd been working in the music industry for a really long time, right?
Yeah.
Like 30 years. So she was seeing it from that angle, and also seeing it as an angle of someone, yeah, like, you know, her kids are my age.
Okay.
So, and many of them like work in music, like as musicians. So it's like you see things from your different stakeholder position, you know? And I think they were it was a good complementary exercise that we were engaged in, right? Because I would just come straight out of a PhD with the kind of research methods hat on, and she'd had 30 years in the music industry with her experience hat on.
So was there like a convergence of like a public conversation about mental health at the time that you did this as well? Or is that just like a personal curiosity and her kind of things? Because I don't remember there being like some kind of, there wasn't like a kind of George Floyd moment of mental health.
Yeah, sure.
In the same way, like a June 2020 where you can really pinpoint it. It
Yeah.
was like this slow kind of ramping up of a bigger conversation in music about mental health generally.
Yeah.
Or maybe now we kind of backtrack and tell stories about things. Oh, maybe that was a mental health thing, or the 27 Club is a mental health issue.
Yeah,
We
right.
speak about it in those frames now, but
Yeah.
in 2018, for example, maybe it was just incidental.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this person had a breakdown. So that's like an isolated kind of case.
Yeah. And there were all, I mean, the sort of tragic thing about music is, right, is that there are always these stories that come along that present this kind of narrative that force you to confront it. So I think some people would probably say like Amy Winehouse, like the death of Amy Winehouse was a bit of a shift in the way that some people started to think about this conversation. But I mean, I don't know how much I would, I don't know. It would sound a bit like I was putting too much stock maybe in what we did. But if you go on the Musicians Union website and you look at the heading under where it says like mental health and well-being, it says the publication of Can Music Make You Sick in 2016 was the time that the music industry started taking mental health more seriously. And I think I really like thought so much about this at the time, but I definitely remember I probably would say it like this, but like pre-Can Music Make You Sick, I don't remember anyone having conversations around. In 2015, no one had a conversation about mental health and well-being in the music industry. And by 2017 and 2018, they did.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like that was the only reason for that. I think there were many, many reasons, but sometimes things do just come along at the right moment, you know? Like,
so I guess like now we're like 10 years removed from that. Like how do you think the conversation has changed more generally? Like do you think it's like moved forward? Do you think, does it feel better? Does it feel worse?
The mental health in the music industry conversation. Okay, so it's moving forward in like lots of interesting ways. So one of the ways that it's moving forward is that it's becoming like a global conversation. So research projects that I'm doing in India, research projects that me and Sally did in Denmark, there are researchers, like not just me, you know, there's researchers all over the world, like people in Australia, people in America. In, you know, like a scoping review just came out, was published recently, and it talked about, like, if you look at the percentage of studies on musicians and their mental health that have been published since 2020, it's like the vast majority of all research ever on that topic is since 2020. So it's expanding. And in that sense, it's going forward. One of the challenges that it presents is that it's like, we don't know very much about like the intervention, like what I would call like the intervention landscape. So we don't know kind of like what making this better actually looks like, you know, like, or the impact of making this better. And all things around like cultural production are productive. Like they come to produce other things. And one of the things that a conversation around mental health in the music industry has produced is like a well-being industry. And like much about that is great. Like there are, I mean, I know people working professionally in this space who are like clinical psychologists who are incredible, like just hats off incredible. But it's also a very like broad, plural, diverse space that ranges from like I did a 2-week course online and now I'm a coach and I know everything about this, that and the other, through to clinical psychologists with 30 years in the NHS. And it's like, they're all in this space. And the challenge I think for there is like, it's very, very hard to disentangle what's working well for whom. Like, it's basically like a sort of largely unregulated space.
Yeah, it's like another Wild West. It's like the music industries are like a Wild West.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then like that has become like another Wild West within it.
Yeah, exactly. It absolutely is. It's like, you know, all these people heading out to San Francisco digging for gold. Like, it's the whole thing. Like, you know, it produces a whole bunch of things. It produces companies that want to come in and sell you yoga and a juice on a Friday to improve like workplace wellbeing culture. It's like, it produces a whole host of things, some of which are complete bollocks and some of which are wonderful. It's like disentangling that is challenging.
Have you been able to, I guess, see the entangling of that effect on people's mental health already? So, you know, maybe since 2020, like all of these, I guess, solutions and interventions have happened on top of COVID, on top of cost of living crisis, on top of ChatGPT. Like, if you were, I guess, reassessing this today, how would you even do it?
I'm continually assessing and reassessing the mental health in the music industry landscape, because it's like, that's basically all I do now. Like, that's like the nature of the work that I do now. And to me, like, all of the changes that come through and impact the music industry from, like AI is the newest conversation, and then COVID was a previous conversation, and then streaming was a previous conversation. To me, they're all amplifications of a pre-existing amplification. Because like, realistically, I think people often want to say that like, there have been these like huge, massive, profound shifts that have changed the way we've done X, Y, and Z. Like, everyone was like, oh, COVID's going to completely remove like the dominance of like London from like the creative industries. Nah, like, it hasn't at all. Like, it might mean that you can work from home a bit more and go to the Cotswolds and come in, but like, it hasn't like meaningfully changed it. The music industry of 2025 really is not actually fundamentally different to the French literature industry that Bourdieu was writing about in 1986. It's just a massively hyper-amplified version of it that has the same gatekeeping, the same notion of people wanting to be seen, the same challenges of economic sustainability, the same everything.
Yeah.
It's just like, now we do have a conversation layered on the top that is like, what is it doing to people? And you might look at it through a mental health lens, you could look at it through other lenses, like I look at it through this mental health and wellbeing lens. But I just think it's a really salient question for people to be having, that's like, what are we doing? You know, like, and lots of people have been having this conversation for a long time, whether that's, you know, Angela McRobbie having this like question in like the year 2000 that's like, how many arts and culture graduates can this industry take? Or like, you know, like how many more artists can this economy sustain? You know, like these shops you see in London that says like, fill this town with artists. I was like, how are they going to pay their rent?
Yeah,
like,
so this is one of those like, feels like maybe an open hypocrisy in my own work. So I'm saying, you know, make the thing.
Sure.
Or like, if you love music, you should learn how to DJ. So people interpret that as everyone should DJ.
Sure.
Or there is, you know, 1,000 places that you can work. But one of my own critiques of what was happening in the industry is actually saying, we're open, we're viable, come and do a course. Study to do this, to get to this level of that. I'm like, well, who's hiring?
Yeah,
and
right.
I guess you're at a university today. Let's say I'm not sure what the exact number is, but the 200 universities in the UK maybe produce, I don't know, 5,000 creative arts graduates a year.
I don't know the number, but that doesn't sound wildly incorrect.
I thought about this in 2020. It's like, okay, well, there aren't like 5,000 jobs.
Yeah, where are they all going? Yeah.
And then as that number starts to grow, you know, especially in the times that we were shut, doesn't that kind of cause a kind of explosion of, you know, 22, 23-year-olds that are like, okay, now what?
Yeah, sure.
And I feel like that's what's happened over the last year and a half, where people were like, hold on, you told us everything was working fine.
Yeah.
But that's clearly not the case. Like, how, when people, I guess, are thinking about going to university or engaging with like academia more broadly, like what is it that you say to them? What's the right way of approaching education, the education structure?
Yeah, I mean, that's a massive question, right? And it's one, I wouldn't pretend to know the answer to. But it's also from like a personal point of view, it's a really, really challenging question to think about, because I'm very like bothered around this question of like, what is it that we're like meaningfully preparing these young people for and asking them to put themselves through to prepare themselves for it? Because you have to like confront that when you, and I can think this is a ridiculous neoliberal reductionist metric of measuring graduate outcomes by salaries, blah, blah. But like when you look at graduate outcomes by the things that people are studying, the outcomes of people studying arts and music are like demonstrably poor.
Yep.
And if you were looking at it, not that I am, but if you were looking at it as a pure like return on investment calculation, you would say this is a poor investment. But the flip side of this as well is to say like, not every single person doing an English literature degree wants to be an author. Mm-hmm. But we do have this idea that pretty much everybody doing like a music degree wants to work in the music industry. And there is also a whole explosion of educational institutions that are literally selling working in the music industry. Mm-hmm. It's not like framed as, so this, I had this, was thought this other day, which is like, is this kind of creative arts education, is it positioning itself as the arts and humanities, or is it positioning itself as vocational training? So the arts and humanities, right, like learning about poetry or learning about Chopin or whatever, is like, this is intellectually and culturally enriching for in and of itself, like to produce critical thinkers who engage with the arts and culture and society. Like that's the argument of arts and humanities. Yep. And that argument is struggling under the weight of a screwed up investment system in higher education. That's one. Then there's another set of higher education. It's like I took my daughter to the opticians the other day and there were all these students in there and I was like, are you like uni students? They were like, yeah, we're doing like ophthalmology or whatever, whatever the word is. Or like studying to be a vet, and they get jobs to be vets.
Yeah.
In creative arts education, I feel like we haven't quite figured out which one of these we're in. I mean, maybe the post-92s have because they used to be polytechnic, so they're more open about the fact that it's vocational training. But anything that isn't a post-92, I feel like they're having this conversation that's like, yeah, are we vocational training or are we the arts and humanities? And it's sort of landing in this sort of uncomfortable middle ground where it's trying to work out precisely what it is.
Yeah. If it's vocational training, it's 40 grand too expensive, and or it shouldn't cost anything
right.
to get to where you need to go.
Right, but related to your question about if it's vocational training, that there aren't actually enough jobs for them to go into. It's like, it's like if you use an example of like teaching, like teachers doing PGCE, there are PGCE places allocated within a university that my understanding is that to an extent they're like matched with teaching need. So we don't produce like 50,000 PGCE qualified teachers every year, and there's no teaching vacancies in schools for them to go to, because that would be a poor allocation of resources. But it strikes me that probably is happening in creative arts degrees, right? That we are producing lots and lots of people that are not able to go into the thing that they dreamed that they could go into. Now, that doesn't mean, though, that what they've learned is not valuable. It's like my sister did like fashion management at like what used to be called Leeds Met. And she's now a primary school teacher because she has a university degree. It allowed her then to get a PGC, which she went on to do, and now she works in a primary school. So there's value in those things. And there's also value, I think, from an arts and humanities point of view of people learning it. But this argument that like, the creative industries is this like open, dynamic, viable, salaried place that is like the engine of X, Y, and Z in the British economy, and we just need these graduates to come and learn these skills to get roles here. It's like for the birds. It's like demonstrably for the birds.
One of the things I put out and you responded to, and we had a good chat about it, is me saying that there are no sustainable careers in the music industry.
Right. It triggers people.
And it bothers people, but it isn't true. And it shouldn't be true that there should be some sort of sustainable music career. Otherwise, the industry and the mechanics of it wouldn't be dynamic. We wouldn't have interest in music.
Sure.
If we just decided that 18-year-old gets to have a music career from 18 to 70 until they retire, and then they get a pension from the music industry.
Yeah.
That'd be ridiculous, right?
Yeah, sure.
And we don't accept this with any other profession. We don't accept that like with sport. We wouldn't say, Ronaldo should be playing football until 70, right?
Yeah.
But people wouldn't frame the two things in the same way.
Yeah. But it's also interesting that, so if we talk about the idea that we like framed the idea that people could have like a sustainable music career, it's almost like the reality is more complicated and more interesting, because yes, people aren't going to have a sustainable career in the way that you've just framed sustainability, in the way that like your grandparent would have had a sustainable career in the Ford factory, right? From 18 to shop manager to blah at 60. But we're not even talking about that. We're talking about the fact that you could earn minimum wage doing music. Like people think that this is viable, like possible, like, and it's for the vast majority of people, it's not. You know, like the musicians' income data, it shows you that the vast majority of musicians are earning way, way less than the minimum wage. So it's like 49% of musicians in the UK earn under £10,000 a year. Well, minimum wage is like 23,000. So for most, and I think, and it's something like, I think it's something like 67 or 68% earn 20,000 or less.
Yeah.
So that shows you that for the vast majority, they're earning less than the minimum wage.
Do you think this is that even itself is like the wrong framing? Because you asked the question of who gets to decide they are professional in music. Like, should you only be able to refer to yourself as a professional in music if you make above the minimum wage, for example?
No.
What do you think?
No. I don't agree with the word professional in music. So I don't use it. I think the word professional is just made up. So like I did this research project in Denmark and I gave a presentation of findings of like mental health and well-being amongst Danish musicians. And one of the people who was sitting in the boardroom said, well, I think that really what you're talking about in your research, because I can hear it in the way you're framing it, you're talking about people who wish they were professionals but weren't professionals. And I was like, okay, interesting. So what's your definition of a professional? And I was like, what? And he said something like, well, someone who earns either all of their money from art or who earns 50% of their income from art, or everybody else around in the art world agrees that they're a professional. So those might be two things that define being a professional. And I was like, cool. Okay, so Van Gogh was never a professional painter. Like he never sold, like he might have sold 2 paintings in his whole lifetime and everyone thought he was shit. So it's made up. And that we also have done like studies where we asked musicians, we like try to split them into various groups to work out whether or not amateurs have like better health and well-being than professionals, like quote unquote. And we ask musicians to like identify which one that they are. And the number of musicians that tick like don't know if you ask them which one that they are is really, really high. And then we ran that statistical analysis and you found like no relationship whatsoever between these variables of being professional or amateur. So then we did another one where we asked them, do you see music as your main career? And the number of ones that then tick yes, because they can identify with that of it being their main career. But like they earn £1,500 a month, £1,300 a month is in Pret, 200 is from PRS. They don't call themselves a barista.
Yeah.
You know, they call themselves a musician. And when you say, oh, well, are you a professional musician? And they go, well, you know, I might perform like 2 gigs at a wedding, but I don't really earn any money from it. But then I did perform at like Glastonbury at the BBC introducing stage, but I still live at home with my mum and I don't know. It's just a nonsense. Like to me, it's a nonsense word.
Like there's like careerism and everything now, right? It's like everything has been turned into like, I guess the career, like 18, like getting a job, 18, pension. And like today, maybe having degrees and courses around this stuff has included music in something that should have never been seen as a career in the first place, right? So like one of the battles that we've had, and I didn't do a music degree. I wasn't in the arts at all. But people that came out of it feel like, well, you actually owed something at the end, right? So if you've done music production, A-level, and then done an arts degree, then logically, you spent 6 years doing the work. You should be able to get an outcome for it, right? That's the logic.
And in research that me and Sally did in Denmark, we talked about this being an expectation gap that a lot of young people have. And it was like particularly pronounced in Denmark because it's completely paid for by the state. So these people are like going to uni for like 10 years, like fully paid, like basically being paid a salary to go there to learn avant-garde flute. And they come out in Denmark where the whole of Denmark is smaller than London in terms of its population. And we were interviewing these musicians about their health and well-being and they were like, I'm finding it really hard to cope with the fact that I cannot seem to make this avant-garde flute playing of mine that I've invested my life into a career. I can't get paid for it. And obviously I'm like a professional, so I'm talking to them like, yeah, okay, interesting. And inside I'm like, oh my God, like no one's had this conversation with you that of course you can't. It's not financially sustainable for you.
I have that, but with like, I guess more modern takes, right? So you're saying avant-garde flute, like it's like some off-kilter thing.
Sure.
But people do this to me today with grime.
Right. It's the same.
and I'll say to them, like, hold on, like you've seen all of us for the last 10, 15 years and gone, that is a viable career option for me. And that scares me.
Right. And it also must be interesting for you in a way, because I'd be interested to know what your take is on this, because you do a very interesting thing, which I often do when I'm talking with students about it as well, but I find it very difficult, which is in the line when you're talking about being DJing isn't a job, or however it is that you frame it. You talk about this notion that like it's really, really challenging, potentially even impossible, to turn this thing into a job and a career. And because of that, the most sensible thing, or the best way to retain your joy and love for the art, is to not think of it as a career. That's like the best way to think about it. Think about it as someone that's just loving playing music, or loving sharing creative ideas online, or loving whatever. But that also must be really triggering for young people who are like, but you have a career. Like, you must have a career. You're paying for this podcast studio. You live in London. I've seen you in Tokyo. You must have a career. You're not like homeless.
True.
Right? So there must be an incredibly frustrating disjuncture for young people to see people of various persuasions. And like, I will include myself as well. Like, people, like young people who are doing master's degrees email me all the time. Like, how did you get your job? And I'm like, it's tough. Like, it's really tough. But to bring it back to the arts thing, I mean, I don't know how you square a conversation like that with young people. No, I don't mean you. I mean, how does one square a conversation like that with young people, especially if what you're saying to them is pay 50 grand to come to this institution and learn about having this artistic career. And what I can't do as a lecturer, like a associate professor, is say to them at the end of their course, do you know what the best thing for your health and well-being would be? Don't think of this as a job.
Yeah.
They'd be like, too late. Like, I'm invested. Emotionally, financially, I'm invested. They're all in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In all dimensions, they're all in.
And for me, when I've been speaking and doing these lectures and stuff, I cannot provide an alternative. And that has been the challenge. It's like, well, make the thing isn't good enough. Like, where do you go? Okay, well, I've done that. Now what should I do? And that's the like next layer of, I guess, what I'm trying to explore in these conversations. Okay, we've got all this information. You know how to make beats, put your stuff online. Maybe you've got a job or something else going on, but people like, what else?
Yeah.
What else is there?
Well, people want a path. Understandably, they want a path. Like, in a modern climate of ambiguity and uncertainty and risk and randomness and social media hype and X, Y, and Z, and where like traditional parameters of stability, of like career, home ownership, X, Y, and Z, when all of these things collapse and disentangle, of course, someone might come to you and be like, okay, so how do I have what you have?
Yeah.
What you have is just what, and the thing is, they will not know everything about like your life. They don't know like where you live, how you might struggle to pay your rent, or this. They don't know anything about your life, but they see your career, right?
Do you think there's like the instability in general? So we come from like a generation of like 0-hour contracts. There's no job for life. There's no, I guess, certainty in anything now. We've had all these disruptions, the COVID and credit crunch, all these different things that have been shaken what the social contract is to its core. So for some people, they view this as like, well, this is the only way I can win, is through having the viral moment, or to gamble on the lottery outcome, because just doing the thing the way as you might have been doing it isn't working anyway. So like, how do you? Yeah, I mean,
well, we are like, you know, I don't know what year Ulrich Beck wrote like The Risk Society, but like that his conceptualization of this risk society has become like so presciently true. And you have all of these young people, and not even like young people, like even like we were just saying before when we were coming on, like even people like of our age, like we're the same age, who feel that these traditional markers of stability or work, or just, you know, even like having a relationship or whatever, these things have all like crumbled and dissolved into such a way that what's left is this notion of like, well, I might as well just risk it all, like on this thing. Like, if I cannot work my way to a house deposit, I'm going to Nvidia my way to a house deposit. You know, like I can no longer exchange my labor for the money that will provide me with security. So fuck it, stick it on this stock. Stick it, you know, do this. And it's reflected. That's the thing about music, why I find it so interesting. Like, music is just like often a mirror on wider things like in society. And the profound risk taking that is like starting a music career is like, it's not unique. Like there's many risks, like, you know, choosing who you want to have a family with is a risk, or, you know, going on Tinder is a risk, or whatever. But these are, they're like symptoms of a malaise in a way, you know.
It's like the whole culture being based on gambling. So if you think of, you're making music, or the music career and journey is taking a gamble. then the sharing of it on the social media platform app of the slot machine kind of thing is the gamble to try and go viral. Then your work sits next to literal gambling. So like the gambling mechanics of like stocks, crypto, sports, and how the American kind of gambling system has changed now. You actually have artists promoting gambling products. And if you watch sport, it's been in the kind of ecosystem of it for a long time. So we're kind of like surrounded by this, all of us kind of pulling the slot machine like, constantly.
Go for it. Like you got to risk it. You got to go for it. You've got like, and music is like an exemplary climate of just go for it, because it's all about believing in yourself, and you know you've got to just close that app and do the thing. And like it's these things are all like symptoms and reflections of one another. You know, it ends up being incredibly frustrating though, because the conversation then becomes like, well, what do we tell young people? Do you tell young people don't bother? Like this is crazy. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to be telling young people that. I'm not in the business of just saying to people, well, this is mad. Like, this is absolutely mad. Because you also need people to be creatively pushing the boundaries and like doing mad things. Like, you know, the example, like, it's quite funny. So like, I got invited to give a keynote talk at this, like, basically, I mean, it was basically like a classical musicians convention, but it was on like musicians' health and pain and stuff. So it was full of a lot of like fairly old classical music blokes. And I was talking about this concept of needing to take risks and believe in yourself and what that does to people and the vulnerabilities of that. And I was like, I don't know how many of you in the room have seen like the new Kanye West documentary on Netflix, knowing that none of them will have seen it. So I showed them the clip of the Genius or Yenis or whatever, or Jesus or whatever it's called, documentary. And you see this guy just like a kid, like in Chicago, living in his mum's house, walking up to people. You know that scene where he's in Rockefeller and he's like, I'm going to be Kanye West. And he's rapping things that were then on like College Dropout or whatever. And you're like, who is this guy? Who's this maniac? Like, this guy is completely nuts. But you need people to be doing that, right? The interesting question, or one of the interesting questions, is like, who gets to do that?
Exactly.
Right? And this is the thing I've like seen you've been talking a bit about this of like the train. Was it the train fares, the tax, or
the train fares, the tax to visit the rest of the country?
Right. So, and it's speaking to questions around like access and, you know, and who's able to do this. And, you know, it's like that paper that I wrote recently that we were talking about, the one about we are viable. Like when having a music career is not viable. Having a music career has never been viable. It's always been financially a ridiculous thing to do. And that's you know, for as long as history has existed, people having creative careers have had patrons, right? Back to like, who's Mozart's patron, or who's Michelangelo's patron, or, you know, these people all had patrons. And in the UK, there have been patrons. It's just the patrons that we had didn't realize that they were patrons.
Yeah,
the state. It was the dole. Like the dole was like the biggest patron of the arts, and two of the biggest patrons of the most culturally significant, influential music that's come out of the UK in the last ever, which is like Black British music, which you could trace back as its genesis, like, in terms of the way it was popping off, to like grime. The patrons of grime were youth clubs and social housing. That's the state. And
by accident.
By accident. They didn't mean to be. And so the question is now is like, so who's the patron of the arts today? Because it's not like the Arts Council. Like, Arts Council doesn't do anything for like young kids on estates doing whatever. Like, who is the patron of the arts today? Basically families. And what that like de facto means is families that live in the south of England, or really, really families that live within Zone 6, rich or poor, of any persuasion. If you live within Zone 6, you're advantaged in this game. I'm not talking about in every facet of your life, but I had this section in the book. So I wrote this book called The England No One Cares About. And I had this section, I was talking to my wife about this, and it was like, there are parts of Norfolk where I live. So I used to live near Goulburn Road, and I was looking at the data for like the LSOAs, like the lower super output areas that talk about deprivation. And I was in like the Goulburn ward in North Kensington. And it was like, this is in one of the top 10% highest rates of deprivation in the United Kingdom. And so I was looking up other wards that were like that as well. So there's a ward that was called something like Tuxwood or something near where I used to live in Norfolk. And that's in the top 10%. And I was in conversation with her that was like, if you wanted a career in the arts, which one? These two places are not comparable. They're not even remotely comparable, even though they appear to be in the top 10% of lower super output areas that are deprived. every single school in Kensington and Chelsea is an outstanding school. Rich or poor, you're attending an outstanding school. I mean, there's horrific things happen in Kensington and Chelsea,
Of
right?
course.
Right. It's not that it's all rosy. We're just talking about the arts here. The arts is a tiny sphere of people's lives.
Of course.
But where gives you a bigger leg up? Being
100%.
born in Goulburn Ward or being born in that place in Norfolk? So
yeah, I'm a living example of this. So if I didn't live in East London, if I lived literally 40 minutes from outside of where I live, I wouldn't have been able to listen to Rinse. I wouldn't have had the access to like youth clubs, all this like kind of investment that was just there. Again, what I thought was just normal.
Right.
I didn't realize until I started DJing around the rest of the country that, like, you know, that don't have pirate radio. Or,
right.
Don't have your own kind of like music setups and systems and stuff.
And this is what's so interesting. So when we talk about this thing of like, to bring it back to the quote when you were talking about at the beginning, about the relationship between a statement like close the app and make the thing and that it doesn't connect, and that you're saying that you're not having a critique of these wider power structures because like I can't put Daniel Elk in a headlock. It's actually the power structure that's slightly subtler that sits beneath that, which is the proximity to cultural power that you have when you're, for example, from East London, where the thing that's close to you is like Rinse FM, not Blackpool Community Radio. You know, you're close. You know, you or other people that might have had a similar situation are close to like the heart of cultural production in a way that appears ordinary, appears like common sense, like, you know, normal. And it's not normal. You know, they opened this whole thing in East London, and I remember Sadiq Khan was opening it, and it was called like, it's where UCL East is and all that stuff around Stratford.
The East Bank,
East Bank.
Yeah, I live walking distance from it.
Right. And it says like, nurturing the creative ambitions of young Londoners. And I thought, wow, that's great. But I don't want to say like they're good, but there's you know, the people from the parts of England that I know, Tuxford in North Nottinghamshire, right? Or Louth, like the highest voting Brexit area in like rural Lincolnshire, like the Humber.
Yeah.
They haven't got shit. Like
this is why you can understand like the resentment for the rest of the country to London, right?
Sure.
And I guess the people that are being seen to get certain kinds of opportunities. And it's really hard for, I guess, if, for example, like if you're white working class, to criticize me as a black working class person. But I'm also 20 years older than you, most likely.
Right.
So I've had a bit of time to build up some capital and some knowledge, right?
Yeah.
But for them to be like, oh, actually, you're benefiting from this whole infrastructure down there, the East Bank, the Olympic reinvestment, the Elizabeth line.
Right.
And it's everything.
You know, it's like even now, like all my family live in the northwest of England. Yeah. And the other day, I shared something with them, and it was like just an article from the Standard, and it was like the DLR extension gets £1 billion to extend the DLR, and my brother lives like on the outskirts of like Huddersfield, and he's like, have you seen my trains like to get into the middle of Manchester? Like they're like this old metal box, you know. And I'm saying that's like a symptom of this. Of course, like people feel pissed off about the inequality of that system, but it also I feel like it's a really, really challenging conversation to be able to have. So like it's interesting that like we're having the conversation. I think it's a really challenging conversation for people. That it's also difficult for like me as like a middle class white bloke to also have this conversation. Yeah. That says, you know, if you take people that suffer certain kinds of intersectional structural inequality that might afflict them in other domains of their life, like for example, you know, like a young black girl, working class black girl that lives in East London, for example, who wants to get into music, and you contrast her experience with a white working class boy in Blackpool who might want to get into music. We're only talking about getting into music here. We're not talking about any other sphere of life. Having questions around like who is advantaged in that conversation is a really hard one, you know? And there's this research that's been done by like Orion Brook and colleagues, and I have the graph of it in the book I have that England No One Cares About, where it has these bar charts that looks at the strongest predictors of securing what they call core cultural work. So it has like class, gender. I actually don't think it has race because I talked to them about the complicated way in which it was captured, but it had a whole bunch of like intersectional parameters. And what you see is like class as this like strong predictor, right? Because they're looking at the creative industries of like, you know, when people say, oh, the creative industry is this really middle class place, like they must not mean the creative industries that I know, but they mean like book publishing and stuff like that. And museums. And museums, of course, art galleries and stuff. And the second biggest predictor is not gender, is not any of these other things. It's being from London.
And how like people in London maybe define class is a completely different way to like being in the Northwest or Northeast or something, right?
Right, it might be.
So like, I guess my example is I can tell two stories about myself. I can say I'm a child of a immigrant single parent, and that alone. Or I can say, you know, my mom came from Jamaica. She went to university for free and has always been in employment and in good health. And I've had a stable roof over my head that allowed me to pursue creativity.
Right.
Which is closer to the truth than the other side. But someone else looking at data could just be like, well, you know, you didn't seem to have a lot of money growing up, maybe just by statistics, but also lived in the most culturally rich place in the continent.
Yeah, right, exactly. So the point is like, these things are always, the answer is always, it's complicated, right?
Yes.
But, and I don't profess to know the ins and outs of all of these things, but I just think it's interesting because I think, particularly over the last 10 years, I think much of the conversation around the challenges of inequality and access in these things has not been, it's complicated. The answer has been, it's straightforward. That's a disadvantage. That's a structural disadvantage. Here. We've been very clear in our justified rage at being able to identify these things. But the sociological, qualitative reality is not that. And
so how do you think the state should intervene then? Because this is the challenge is like we frame in one example of the state not intervening, just having the dole and us getting on with it by ourselves. And then over the last, say, 25, 30 years, we've had state intervention, the Arts Council, rebuilding of the East Bank, all of these things that are like, you're going to make some culture happen. Culture. You know what I mean? We're so good at culture, but it actually isn't producing maybe the, you know, career outcomes or the financial outcomes for the individual as it does for the macro.
Right. And so even that, like the disjunction between like the macro of like what it produces versus the micro, how that's lived for people on the ground, to me is like so fascinating to try and disentangle, because if you look at these reports that are like the music industry is worth X billion to the economy, or even bigger ones where it's like the creative industries are worth so and so billion, like
but it includes like football.
Yeah, right. Or, you know, like IT is like the biggest like line in the line graph or whatever. And if you remove that, the growth is like pretty much close, is like nothing.
Yeah. Or taking Taylor Swift and Ed Sheeran out of the music bit would be like zero.
Yeah, exactly. Now you might make an argument that says, which is a bit like the argument that like, I remember when I got signed to Sony, I remember them saying, like, saying to my manager, like, why has my life not changed? Like, why is nothing different? And he was saying like, well, the thing is they might sign like 30 people a year, but they only need one of those to be Adele for the whole thing to recoup the whole mission, and off they go again. And it's a bit like that with all of this investment. Like you only need one, who's the geezer who did Peaky Blinders? They only need one Stephen, whatever his name is, to be like, there you go. Bang, whole thing's paid for itself.
Yeah, like the anomaly rather than the rule.
Right. Because there aren't a bunch of people in music or film and TV, or, you know, you look at like the crisis in like the film and TV industry now. Like, I have a PhD student that's doing basically like, can music make you sick? But like basically, can the film industry make you sick? You know, all these people are just run ragged, like on like shit contracts, earning absolutely nothing, like burning themselves out into the ground for this notion that like, we have Pinewood Studios. You know, like, we do. And that's great. And so... Like,
so do you think there could be the conversation maybe like we have like say like green jobs, and people would say, oh, there are like bad jobs in like say like oil and like maybe destructive things. Do you think there could be a separation of that in the arts sector? Could there be like the state be like, oh, music is making you sick, but we also think music is good.
Right. So we need to counteract that in some way.
Yeah.
Like almost like if you're an economist, almost treating like the negative health and well-being outcomes like a negative externality that you try and redress through subsidy. Like, you know, like if I was teaching Introduction to Macroeconomics, that's how I would teach it.
Yeah.
The state has like always played a role in the subsidizing of this thing, like in the examples that we talked about. And like today it's playing this like explicit role in something like East Bank or whatever. It's playing it in a very like geographically focused way. I mean, you know, you can see studios that, you know, moving the BBC to the northwest of England or whatever's opening in Birmingham or whatever. Like it's always playing a role in it. Like a lot of people that I know that work in the arts have this thing of like, oh, well, what we should have is, this is in this paper that we were chatting about, this basic income for the arts. We should just pay the artists. I don't think this works, man. Like, I don't see that. Like, I just think it like fails a lot of tests. I think it fails tests in terms of like feasibility of like even just like basic fairness. Because like if I worked like, you know, the nursery nurses that look after my 2-year-old who are being paid like tuppence, and they see somebody like sitting around in you know North London making rap beats, they're like, what? Like, you know. So there's profound like problems with that. But there is also, when we talk about privileges and we talk about, there's also a certain like privileged position that one exists in within academia, which is sometimes I like joke that say like my role is to comment on the veracity of the fire that's burning down Roll. The fireman can put it out, right? But that is in a way the privilege of doing like applied critical theory or whatever the fuck it's called that I do, where, you know, I like sociologically interrogate what it is that's going on in the world and present things in the hope of like engendering a conversation about it. But I don't pretend to have the fucking answer.
Yes.
Like, I'm not a clinical psychologist that has the answer for anyone's health and well-being. I'm not in the treasury that has an answer for how we fund arts and culture. All of these kinds of things.
Don't you think that's like the arts industry and the ecosystem has like changed the framing then of before we used to speak for the people, right? We're supposed to be reflective of the society that we live in. Whereas today, we're just trying to reflect to survive, like to justify our existence. So like a lot of the energy in the, I guess the UBI conversation, before it would have been like, well, we're trying to get that for everyone.
Sure, yeah.
Now we're just trying to get it for ourselves.
Right. yeah. It's like, yeah. No, that's absolutely the case. And there's definitely a sense that like the art, and we're talking in very like broad, porous terms here, but like there's definitely the sense that like the arts have to, particularly in like a kind of post-austerity world, have to work extremely hard to justify their own existence. And in fact, that's one of the things that I think is so interesting about this arts and health movement more broadly, that like taking part in music or like the arts and culture is good for your health. Because to me, it's a symptom of a broader desire to justify what it is that you do. Like, don't take us down. We're going to save you. Do you know what I mean? Like, we will literally help you live longer. Like I was reading something recently and it was like, oh yeah, like looking at this Van Gogh painting is going to like improve your mood by X, Y, and Z, thinking that it was really ironic that the person that they're looking at has suffered in X, Y, and Z. You know,
yeah.
It's part of this wider idea that we need to justify ourselves, by ourselves, like including like all of us, I guess,
100%.
Of like why what we do is valuable. And that's almost, I think that's like reflected in like a whole bunch of institutions. It's not just in the arts. That's, you know, universities do that. I mean, you know, a hospital does that. I mean, everything that is metricized and ranked and hierarchied and, you know, reduced to a metric in that way has to argue for its own existence and has to say why it's valuable.
And then you chase the statistic or the metric to justify existing.
Right.
Like even if the metric becomes irrelevant in what you're actually trying to achieve,
right.
You're like, well, for a university, it might be the amount of students you get in. It doesn't really matter where they're from. They could be from like the Northeast or London or from Beijing. It doesn't, as long as they're students, it's fine, right?
Right.
And then the same thing if you're making money as a creative, for example, or as a musician, doesn't matter if you're making money from a stream or from like a medicinal supplement.
Right.
As long as you get to make tunes, who cares?
Yeah.
Like that kind of push and pull, like you see like the challenges that we're all going through of like, oh, you know, before, maybe that was selling out before, but hey, we've got to like get it back or whatever it's going to be, right?
Right. Everyone is just like struggling to make this thing both work and make sense. And you're trying to make it work and make sense outside of the parameters of this traditional career path of saying, well, what is it that I'm doing? Like, how am I making this work? I don't know the answer of this, where any of this really is going, but it's a mess. It's a mess. And it's a mess that, of course, like, from my point of view, the work that I do around that mental health, like, of course it impacts people because there is this like utter disintegration of any kind of ontological security anywhere in your life, not just in the music that you make, but the home that you live in, the relationship that you might not have, the visibility that you're seeking to acquire on social media, the children that you now can no longer afford to have. in the home that you're rapidly concerned that the landlord will take off you, whilst you're trying to get somebody desperately to pay attention to you on social media, which is essentially what you're doing in sharing music and stuff on there, whilst you're told by everybody around, hey, come and participate in this labour market and put your song on Spotify. 150,000 songs go on Spotify every day. Who the fuck's going to listen to you? But that's what everybody is trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Because ultimately it is a whole landscape of people wanting to be heard because they feel that the things that they have to say are valuable. And I'm sure that they are. That's no judgment on whether they are or not. And the number of times that I've interviewed musicians over the last few years and they've used the same analogy of, often the analogy is either they describe themselves as like screaming underwater, or they do the analogy of like screaming in their dream and no noise comes out of their mouth.
Wow.
I mean, that same
it's like
analogy.
the Matrix, right?
Right,
With, like, the mouth wrapping up and you're trying to scream.
Right. So I must have heard that analogy in like 15 interviews separately in different parts of the world, like over the last like 10 years. And it's a sort of...
Do you know what that might be? Because I experienced this too from doing the lectures everywhere, is everyone consuming the same media too. So imagine if you'd be listening to like podcasts and motivational content, you've seen like inspirational graphic or whatever, some, you know what I mean? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's seen the same one.
Mm-hmm.
So they end up asking the same question and they also kind of end up producing the same work. Sometimes I've literally been in like Toronto, London and Mumbai, and people ask the exact same question, exact same way, word for word. It's bizarre. Like why has that outcome happened?
Right.
And why did we...
What kinds of questions do they ask then that's the same?
Well, it's the, I guess, the core thing of...
how do I make this work? And the one you started with.
But what didn't exist before is like our platforms hadn't been exported to all these places. So before, like a kid in Mumbai's dream now is to play Boiler Room.
Right. So you had a really interesting thing when we spoke a while ago where you were talking about the fact that one of the things that social media has done, it's like, say if we're talking about DJing, it's presented the same career trajectory of DJ success to everybody from all corners of the world, where it's like, here are these 10 festivals, here's this BMW X5, and it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
But that they're all chasing something that a minuscule fraction of them will ever attain. Even the ones that do might struggle for X, Y, and Z, whatever reasons. But it's exporting, I don't know.
It's exporting our point of view, our politics in some way. It's exporting our industry, but it's not their industry. It's like the way it functions in East London,
right,
for example. So like NTS and Boiler Room are from East London, and Rinse is from East London. There's a reason that exists in that thing. But as soon as you make, say, Boiler Room, Osaka.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was literally just watching the Gothtrad thing the other night, so that's what was in my mind.
It changes what it is, and it changes the dynamics of like, okay, well, does someone that plays on there from Osaka get to travel the world and break in all these other markets? We're breaking in other markets because, again, we're maybe like an easier place to get to for the rest of the world. We're English speaking, all of these advantages that we have. But say like some of my friends that have been on that platform or many others or the new platforms that have been created, they're like, why is this not working for me?
Yeah, right.
Here in Perth. Like, why doesn't anyone want to book me in London?
Yeah, right. And so like, like I'm doing this research project in India now. And, I am learning more from the people in India on the ground of like the reality of the lives that the musicians that they work with day to day face. And, it's just it's just a culturally enriching and like juxtaposing experience for me to be like, on the one hand, when I talk to, a rapper in London or Copenhagen or Mumbai, they share many of the same things and they ask many of the same questions. And they share something of a comparable world in terms of like their outlook and their desires and what it is that they want. But there's much about their world that they do not share. Like clearly not. And, the infrastructure that might be around that rapper's life in Mumbai or Delhi or something compared to the rapper's life in London.
Yeah.
It's just, they're a million miles away,
Do you see this like intersecting with people's politics and maybe like that being at the forefront of people's presentation now? But like maybe in 2012, let's say, when you were putting out music, you didn't have to like, declare your politics in any meaningful way. You just put out the music and that would infer something if people even wanted to know. Whereas today, the DJ has to like tell you like who they're voting for
Mm-hmm.
and which direction things are going.
Well,
do you think that's
did you watch the thing on Netflix? It was the one about the Chicago Bulls.
No.
Right. So it was like a 6-part series about the Chicago Bulls like winning streak when they became Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls. Like we would have been the same, because I watched that when I was like 12 or whatever.
Oh,
so
The Last Dance.
Yeah, The Last Dance.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So there's a really interesting bit in The Last Dance where they're talking about Michael Jordan's the challenge that he had where he wouldn't endorse this like black Republican candidate or black Democrat candidate. I can't remember which one it was. And his desire to like completely stay out of that, you know. And I remember thinking like, wow, that would he even be able to do that today? Like in 2025, would he be allowed to not have a position on that today? Right? Like as you're just saying there, like that you have to stake your story.
Yeah.
You know, like because that's what you're selling your story, you know, and in order to sell your story effectively, you have to stake that story. You have to ground it in something. You have to do something that triggers the clicks and likes of people that get you to where you want to go. It's just,
yeah.
That's
And
the
like
game.
now, I guess if we get their attention, like if say like all the DIY creative community decide to vote green, for example, then I guess us as an industry ecosystem, whatever you want to call it, can start to like influence policy in some way, even if it's just like, again, through our infographics, through our music, through videos, through this podcast, whatever it's going to be. What do we say?
Right. So it's like, yeah, like you know, you can fight your whole life to have the eyes and ears on you, but once they're looking at you, what are you saying to them? What are you showing them? Right. And that's sometimes the challenges in like that you're on the mission for this thing. You know, part of it is like the journey, like, and I think that's what, you know, like in my music story, like for me, it was like once I got to one of the points of the journey that I was going on, which was like being signed, I was like, oh, now what? Like, you know, I couldn't reach like a next level. So it was like, oh, I don't know where this is now going.
Yeah. I think I asked that question to a lot of people when they come to things. I'm like, do you actually want to be famous? Do you actually want to be rich? Do you actually want to be a pop star? And most people just be like, not really. I just want to make tunes.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Like that's most people's like reaction. It's like, no, actually, I just want to DJ, play some music, and I want to play my in a band with my friends. So I was like, well, then you don't need all this other infrastructure and apparatus to get those ideas done, right?
Right.
You think you do to validate your work in the first place, but actually, if you just want to make the thing, just make the thing. Like, forget all the other stuff, right? Yes,
but if you do ignore all of the apparatus of all of that other stuff, the eyes and ears on you, the likes, the building yourself up, this thing, and just focus on making the thing and doing the music and stuff like that. On the 29th of next month, where do you get the money to put it in Foxton's account? And I think the idea for, or whoever it is you're paying money to, because I often think like sitting behind this idea is one of the biggest like predictors of mental health and well-being outcomes among musicians in the research that I do, for example, is how they answer the question, do you feel successful? Yes, no, don't know. Actually on a graded Likert scale. And I'm sure this is true in other industries. I don't think that's unique to musicians, that those that feel that they are more successful have better mental health and well-being outcomes than those that feel than those who feel they don't. But that is also like a completely subjective beast insofar as like if what feels successful to you is playing to 150 people in a pub in Huddersfield and being able to be a primary school teacher and go on holiday to Lanzarote in the summer, but you still get to like make the tunes that you want and you don't have them lot from London telling you what to do, great, you feel absolutely brilliant. But if your desire was to play to 600 people at venues every other week and do this, that and the other, you'll feel that you've come up short against something.
Yeah.
And many, many people, in my experience, when you interview them, people in the arts, like I only really know musicians, so you ask them, what would success look like to you? You know, what in your mind would success be? Almost none of them say like being rich and famous.
Yeah.
You know, they never say they want to be Taylor Swift or Kanye West or whatever. They never say that. They just say like, oh, I want to be able to, and their definition of success is often much more modest because it's like, I just want to make the tunes. Like I say, I just want to make the thing.
Yeah.
But what sits behind that is, I want to only make the tunes.
Yeah.
Right? Most people want to only do that. If they really had their choice, they don't want to work in Pret, they don't want to work in a secondary school, they don't want to do violin teaching on a Sunday afternoon. They want to just do that thing that they're doing.
Yeah.
But actually, the likelihood of them earning anything close to the minimum wage from doing that thing that they want to do is profoundly low. So if they want to create that viable career, which we've told them is there, we've told them they can reach out and grab it if they just stretch their arm a little bit further, is through being seen on social media, is through being visible, is through getting your music on New Music Friday or whatever piece of cultural significance matters to you, because you have to play that game, because often those things don't like directly translate into money. It's like when you speak to people that do like music marketing and PR, and you talk about like, what's the value of you getting on like Pigeons and Planes, or the value like this probably shows like the era that I know, but the value of getting on Noisy, or the value of getting on Radio 1, or the value of getting on Extra. None of those things pay you any money.
Yeah.
They are leverage that you then take to somebody else later, like a brand or a label or a publisher or whatever, and say, look, like I'm doing things in this scene. I should be rewarded for that. So I think many of those people that like want to be seen and be visible, actually what's sitting behind that is just the desire that like they want to only do this thing.
Yeah.
And as you say, it comes back to that. It's a really like salient question that you ask of like, how do I get paid to do the thing that I love and live in the most expensive city in the world and only do that thing? Because what you're asking for is something near impossible.
Yeah.
You're asking for this piece of gold. But the challenge is that many of the people that they see look like they have that gold. It's not that gold is impossible. It's not impossible to win the lottery. That's why people keep playing it. It is possible for you to attain that. And it's possible for you to earn money as a musician. Of course it is. Like the statistics show you that it is. But the idea that it's normal or straightforward.
I argue that, I guess, if we're like closing up here, like this, can music make you sick? Like, and kind of ending it in some sort of positive place. And that's my attempt to do this, is that our music, wider creative ecosystem would be healthier if everyone wasn't trying to pursue the career angle in it. So like you said, there's the school teacher that plays the gig. It's not just going to be happier, but it's going to make something different as well. And behave differently and function differently in a relationship and all these other things.
So I'll give you a really good example of this. So when I was in school, basically in the part of England that I was from, everybody basically wanted to do the same thing, which was really everybody wanted to be, well, maybe it was like Blink-182, but they wanted to be like, what were they called, like NoFX or like them type of bands, right? They all just wanted to be in basically what I would call rock bands, but I guess they would delineate the genre of, I don't really know this genre that well, but they all wanted to be in bands. And like I wanted to rap, but they wanted to be in bands. So all my mates were in like screamo bands, and our whole 20s were just like me trying to be a rapper, them in loads of bands, singing, going around doing this, like trying to get signed. Like that's all of us did that. Every single one of my mates from school did that. None of us make music anymore, apart from one of them. And the only one who continues to make music, he's in a mariachi band, and he's a primary school teacher, and he played Boomtown with his mariachi band, and he goes around and he loves it. Music for him is so joyful. And I was talking to him, I was just on holiday with him in France this summer, and I was like, you just love this still. He was like, it's so fun. He was like, I just love this. Like, I play the songs, I like dance with people, we drink, like someone proposed on stage at Boomtown while he was performing that. And hearing it, the research that I do is always often around the negative sides of music, because it's the research that I do. But hearing him talk about this joy from music, and I was like, you're the only one that never wanted this to be your only job. He never cared about it being that. He just did it because it was fun. But I still think that is an incredibly hard sell.
Yes.
Right? It's a hard sell to young people investing their life and money in this thing. Because what we're almost saying is, okay, so this also like reveals my/our age. Like everyone my age now is like having kids. Like they've all got like, like I've got 2 little kids. And invariably in your friendship group, you will find there are couples who then struggle to conceive. And there are often these conversations where people have, where you'll hear someone say this kind of like trite pop psychology thing that says like, once you stop trying, it will happen. Like once you stop wanting it, it will come. And it's a bit like this here. Like once you stop focusing on it being your job, once you stop trying to make it your work, that might materialize. It might, but it also might not.
Yeah. Or something different.
Or something different might.
Nothing comes out of it.
Right. But while you're at it, choose your mum wisely, right? Because if your mum lives in zone 6, then you're likelihood of it accidentally turning into something wonderful because you happen to go to school with, like, I have people come in and like talk on my degree course and stuff all the time. They'll say things like, I was wanting to get into music. So, I just got on the tube. I was 18. I just jumped on the tube. I went down to Universal. I was trying to get them to give me a job like as an A&R. The first thing that I did, like once I got my job, I was like, who did I go to secondary school with? Someone who was in the Sugar Babes. And like, that was my first thing because we were in primary school together and I did this thing. I was like, no one in my school has won a Brit Award.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But like ordinary schools here have that, and it's, if you're talking about the sickness that pervades the music industry and the musicians and the music industry workers that are part of it, what has to be part of your conversation is, how do you make this healthier and better? You can't just be like, everything's shit, because it's not.
No.
Like there's much about music that's amazing, like, right? But the question is, yes, how do we make it healthier, and how do we like put things in place that protect actually like the health and well-being of like younger people that want to come into this, to allow them, and this is the point I think that connects to lots of the stuff that you talk about. How do you allow people to centralize or re-centralize the joy that brought them here in the first place, right? The beauty, the creative fulfillment of not like, how many views did this reel get? How many likes is this thing getting? How many plays has this got on Spotify? Not this metricized, reductionist, warped idea that everything we're seeing on Instagram is like the real world, but the thing that provides you with that joy and fulfillment. But it would be a lie to pretend that's easy.
Perfect. Thank you, George.
Cool. Thank you so much, man.